Hi all, I have another amazing game in the Sicilian Sveshikov to show you. So this is great if you're going to try and practice this opening online or over the board. This is Ethereal 11.73 versus Leela ID 61133, one of the recent networks. 3 minutes with a 2-second time control. Decap provided these amazing games to me. E4 from Ethereal, and the opening book given is this. Sicilian Sveshikov here, standard stuff with knight d5, 7 knight d5 though. So this move has risen in interest due to the recent World Championship match. It used to be at move 7, bishop g5. So we get this critical continuation where either bishop takes or knight takes. Sorry, knight d5 is usually played. So yeah, this 7 knight d5 is popularized by Caruana. We have here knight takes d5, e takes, and there's two main moves that was seen in the World Championship. The knight going here or the knight going here. We see in this game knight b8, and here we see the move c4. Caruana was also testing out a4 here, very interesting a4. But here we see c4, so you might have to face c4. Does c4 offer any issues for black? Or is it a comfortable game? We see here bishop e7, and this is the end of the book. Bishop d3, a6. The knight goes to c3. Both sides now castle, and black has the luxury of playing f5 in this position. So it does seem already quite dangerous for black. This bishop f6, for example, and e4 look like moves you might want to play at some point to open up this bishop. F3 is played, so this dissuading e4. We see knight d7, bishop e3, and now black really wants to actually exchange off the dark square bishops. This seems like an extremely logical positional exchange. It would mean, for example, knight c5 might be much better in the future, with a5 especially to stop b4. Ideas like that. Now, Ethereal preserves the bishop with bishop f2. So, as an example, I don't think there's too many issues for black on this exchange. For example, like this, the queen can even cheekily go into e3 and play like this, not minding the queen's coming off. And in fact, maybe even a5 is possible. Any knight b5 to hit d6, rook f6, protecting d6. So, bishop f2, keeping some tension in the position, queen f6. We see bishop c2. Here, in fact, if white wants to play for c5, b4 is a disaster actually because of, I hope you can spot it, black to play, e4. This opens up the queen hitting c3, so this will just be winning a piece. So white has to be careful. Bishop c2, queen h6. And again, we have a potential idea of bishop e3 to get rid of, to exchange off the dark square bishops. White takes control of e3 a bit more with queen e2. We have b6. Now bishop a4. It looks as though b6, is that a major concession on the knight squares? Is this bishop coming in with quite a dangerous position for white? Rook b8. So just in case white had any idea of taking and bishop takes b6. The pawn is now protected. Rook ad1. If we look instead, actually, instead of rook ad1, bishop takes here. Yeah, there's no particular problem for black at all. This would be pretty pointless, it seems. For example, this situation, black's in a really comfortable way and can look forward to h5 in this scenario. So that would be very nice. Just getting rid of the dark square bishop is fine there. So rook ad1, knight f6, rook fe1. So it seems, yeah, white's nicely centralized. The rooks seem quite logical. This bishop seems ready to pounce into white, into the black position. This bishop looks to be targeting b6. What can possibly be wrong from white's perspective? We see e4. This does put the pawn chain under a bit of pressure. It does give up the d4 square, and often this is quite a bad idea if you're giving the opponent d4. So why has Leela done this? We see bishop d4. If f takes e4, one of the big snags is it weakens g4 here, so knight g4 actually threatens queen h2, and if bishop g3, then check is lethal. For example, like this, where actually the f file opens up with the bishop covering g1, so the queen would have to be given up. That's a total disaster. So yeah, white has to be extremely careful. So if we just look at this again, bishop d4, the chosen move. So on f takes here, you might think, well, h3. Well, the problem is knight takes f2, f takes e4 on the queen, e3. This is very comfortable for black indeed. Very, very comfortable. The rook can swing across, protect e3 as well. So very dangerous position. So bishop d4 seems entirely logical. Kind of weakness of the last move, weakening d4. Why not go into that? We see rook b7. This looks like a really nifty rook transfer, Magnus Carlsen style. Bishop c6. And now actually rook b f7. You might wonder, hold on, why can't white just take this pawn? Instead, white actually played knight a4. It's really quite an interesting position. What's going on here? This latent pressure, this power of the two rooks here. Are they really enough to offer a pawn here? Let's have a quick look. Bishop takes b6. White could be in trouble after bishop f4, g3, taking on f3, and now simply bishop e5, giving the idea that knight g4 is really quite dangerous, as well as a potential f4. So for example, bishop f2, knight g4, f4 is mega dangerous for white, even though, okay, that pawn has cost white a lot of time. The black rooks now have conspired on the f-file, and it seems whatever white does here, white's in big trouble. If rook takes e5, that seems resourceful, but it doesn't help. Yeah, white's crumbling there. So this position, yeah, it seems really quite dangerous. Instead of g4, if g takes bishop h3, rook takes f4, threatening all sorts. Rook f2, rook g4. So that's pretty nasty. And here, if rook d2, just rook takes f2, that's huge. That's a disaster. There's going to be things like queen c1 check coming in if rook takes f2. So yeah, there's all disaster scenarios. So after bishop takes b6, there's a whole world of trouble after bishop f4. So in fact, bishop takes b6 wasn't used. Knight a4 was used. That seems a bit polite, but leaving the bishop on d4, does that help matters? A lot. Now here, it's really amazing to me, this situation. Is it really that dangerous for white's king? I mean, what would you think here? Hasn't white played it safe around the b6 pawn? And surely there's nothing much to worry about here. We see bishop f4, which does induce weakness. White doesn't really want to play a move like h3, weakening the dark squares. So plays g3, g3. So guess what Leela plays in this position, if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. Okay, I found this stunning myself. Bishop takes g3, just giving up a whole bishop here. I might think, what is this? And here, just a quiet move, just liberating this bishop. It looks as though, yeah, the two pawns which shield the white king are both being attacked in this position after f4 as well. But is this so dangerous? It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. So queen h2 was played, was tried. If we look at this, let's say g4. This doesn't help white's pawn chain after e takes, bishop takes g4, queen g5, or king safety after knight h5. It looks absolutely horrendous. The king has no shelter and no escape, it seems, and black is increasing the pressure on the king. So that's a huge advantage. g4 really seems to do nothing for white. F takes e4, f takes g3, just leaves huge threats. Knight g4 rook f2, for example. So say queen g2, bishop h3 though, in that case. And here, black can look forward to possibilities like this, crashing through using the doubled rooks. And that's just mating white. So yeah, it looks as though this is really horrendous. So f takes fg. Instead of queen g2 here, if bishop takes, you might ask, rook takes. The problem is that the form pawn is actually stopping rook f1. If rook f1, rook takes again, and then queen h2 is mate. So you might think, hold on, in this position, there must be a defense, surely. Rook f1. There's knight g4. So this position is actually, it seems untenable. It's unbelievable, but it's perhaps one of the things going wrong here is this bishop and this knight. They're just offside pieces to the king's safety. So black's build-up of doubling the rooks and then sacking the piece, just getting rid of the king's shelter. It seems there's no defense in a lot of these variations. After knight f2, what is white doing? There's lots of ideas here. If queen takes, then queen h1 is checkmate. If bishop takes f2, then just taking here and bishop h3. This is lethal, this kind of scenario. Otherwise there's going to be like a check and a check here to win the queen if the rook moved. Let's put that on the board. You know, a check and a check here wins the queen, for example. It's phenomenal. I mean, this sacrifice does seem to be completely sound. You might want to analyze it yourself. This situation is remarkable. Let's just go back here for again. So queen h2, we've looked at g4. We've looked at f takes e4. You might want to look at g takes f4. So both of these pawns, let's see what happens with both of these pawns. G takes runs into knight h5. We get the knife on f4 effect. Ben Feigeld's knife on f4. He's popularized that expression. This situation is just strange. It's just really quite strange how there doesn't seem to be any legitimate defense. For example, like this is mating. This, yeah, after knight h5, it seems utterly hopeless. If f takes, again, knight takes f4, the check, bishop g4 threatens now bishop f3. This bishop is just not parrying these threats on the light squares. It's sunk into black's possession. It's horrendous. It just seems to be indefensible, this position. Yeah. This, I don't know what really. Yeah. 27, queen takes e4. Yeah, knight g3. Okay, another try, rook f1. Another try, rook f1. Just f takes g3. Knight's going back to maybe try and help out. It's a bit too late after e takes. And bishop g4. This is just crushing. Yeah, if black gets material like that, that's fine. A very strange position indeed. Very strange. So queen h2 was tried. So other moves just seem to fall apart. The white position falls apart. We see now queen g6 keeping the queens on. g4. So this was the move tried here. If queen h4 here, e takes, and white's crumbling like this, knight h5. This is an interesting idea to sack the exchange to blunt this bishop, but it's ignored with queen c2. And this scenario is hopeless for white with f2 check now, and queen takes g4 check. Yeah, it's crushing there. So fascinating. So after queen g6, g4. In this line with queen h4, just examine this for a moment more. So on queen c2, that's really the strongest move. So we looked at g4. If queen takes h5, f takes g3, so looking at f2 now with queen f2. If rook f1, g takes f2, queen d1 check, and here if rook f1, f2 check would win the queen. Just put that on the board. Winning the queen. So king h2, but here rook f5, and this scenario with that thorny pawn, this knight's just offside, isn't it? This scenario is horrible. Threatening now things like rook h4, and now taking on e6 is useful. It seems as though it's just totally hopeless scenarios for white's king safety. So anyway, we'll run with g4. We have e takes. I think the blame lies with these offside pieces. It was attractive to insert them over here to either win material or dominate the queenside squares, but they have abandoned the king. We have bishop takes f6 being played. If rook e6 here, queen takes g4 check, queen f5, knight g4 check, knight e3, and black's got a big advantage. There's a famous Tony Miles game where he encouraged his opponent to put pieces into his position. I mean, it seems like a conscientious, hard-working thing to do, to sort of make inroads into the opponent's position, but it can't be at the expense sometimes of other sectors of the board if they're irretractable, the pieces, which they do seem to be in this kind of position now. So yeah, bishop takes f6 was tried, rook takes, rook d2, and now queen takes g4 check. The king goes to h1. It looks absolutely horrendous now. In fact, in this position, rook h6 would be winning already. Queen f5 is played, reserving rook h6 under slightly better circumstance. If we look at rook h6, white's winning. Even with this resource, it doesn't matter about rook g1, pending the queen. Queen g3 cements a huge advantage for black in this position. It doesn't matter that white's got the extra piece. If you look at this, black's got a huge advantage again in these scenarios. These pawns are just far too much, for example like this, and the pawns are just going to come up the board. But what does white actually do here? Yeah, it's just, it will be really helping the pawns. They have like a ton of passed pawns there. So very, very interesting. But queen f5 even better, rook g1. So king h8 to prepare rook h6 without queen takes h6. And it's defenseless. This h file. So just white takes that b6 pawn, rook h6, knight takes, black wins the queen, recaptures on c8 now, bishop a4, and the game ended here. I thought, hang on, what have I just witnessed here? This is a really mysterious game with this mysterious bishop sack. I believe it's just white has mishandled the pieces to be far away from the king, and black has energetically transferred resources, even this queenside rook, to double very usefully, and to sort of really damage all the sheltering pawns around the king. It's pretty instructive for the attacking player that wants to spice up their attacks. Maybe encourage, distract the opponent's pieces to be kind of visiting your queenside, as long as it's not fatal for your king safety, and then go for king safety with a piece sack. It makes it look easy what happened here. I just found it quite smooth. Yeah, if the game continued, let's say queen takes c4, h6, it's actually, the rooks are pretty hopeless here. The queen is running riot. Things like this is winning material, but otherwise, say bishop b3, then the check is lethal, coming in with the rook. It's pretty hopeless here. Here, this will be coming in for a checkmate pattern. So yeah, I'll take you to the game end again. So it really shows in this line with 7 knight d5. If this really is being popularized, this move 7 alternative instead of the classic bishop g5. then that's very interesting. And there's nothing to fear, it seems, in this variation. It seems as though black's got a load of attacking potential. And I thought this game really encapsulated that quite a lot. I hope you enjoyed it as much as me. If you want to learn more about the Sicilian Sveshikov and the way Magnus Carlsen has been playing it, there's a Fight Like Magnus free lesson there at Kingscrusher TV /Magnus. Okay, thanks very much.